This is a show about facing fear, unlocking courage, and taking action.
Courage isn't necessarily a daunting thing.
It's going to give you more purpose. It's going to give you more drive.
It feels like making a courageous decision is going to get you closer to who you aspire to be.
It's knowledge plus faith plus action equals courage.
So you know, when you're reading a great book, you want to find out what's going to happen in the end. And then when you're about 3/4 of the way through, you start looking to see how many chapters are left because you're afraid it's going to be over too fast. So every time I bumped into a big fear moment, I kind of thought that's a signal to grow. I've never chased the dollar. I've always chased growth. And guess what? I ended up getting both.
I'm so fired up for today's guest because there's just some people you meet that you know right away you're going to get along with. And I'm not sure that was the case, that I thought that was going to be the case in the build-up, because I'm hired to do a job, by the way, on Thanksgiving Day here in America, which means nothing over in Europe. Well, maybe it means something, but it means a lot less over there. And it's going to be the morning of Thanksgiving where I have to give a keynote, or I get to give a keynote to Kellanova Europe. And what I try to do on these keynotes is have the most senior person last of my leadership lap, so I'm actually prepared to have a little bit of knowledge on the business. So here, it's David Lawlor. He's the president. He's been there 35 years. He's in Ireland, and he's running the whole thing over in Europe. And when I say Europe, I mean, I'm sitting with people in Russia back then when we had this conversation. And the minute that we got going, I knew right away that this is my guy. Like, this is someone that is not afraid to be brave. And I just want to share one little line that David Lawlor has said to me recently. He said, "Fear is the starting line of growth, and growth is the path to fulfillment." I figured this is the perfect place to start for two reasons. One, it's a beautiful line. And two, I'm not totally certain you thought I actually was like remembering the line. I got the line. I love the line. So David, first of all, it's great to see you, man. How's retirement? How are we doing over there?
Well, it's good to see you too, actually. And I know this is a conversation that we've kind of put off for all sorts of reasons for a while. So it's great to finally do it. How's retirement going? I don't know. I mean, I'm waiting for it to reveal itself. I promised myself, as you said, 35 years at an operating rhythm. And the easiest thing to do is to dash back in to look for continuity, as it were, albeit something different. So I promised myself I'd sit on my hands for at least 6 months and see what is it that I miss the most, what is it that I absolutely don't miss at all, and have any ideas kind of popped up as to where I want to go next. And I'm trying to be as intentional. Anybody who works or has worked with me in the past would know intentionality is a big thing for me. If you just kind of drift along versus if you have a point of view, different things happen. But yeah, so I'm waiting to see. I'm still waiting to see. The cool thing is my wife is still smiling at me at the end of each day, which
huge win.
Not for granted. When you're retiring, you can absolutely not take that for granted. For anybody who's close to retirement, I want to share this anecdote. I talk and I mess you through stories. Here's a good one for you. Just before I was retiring, I came back from some trip and I'm rarely home early in the afternoon. And here I was at home. My wife is, "Oh my God, here you are. I didn't expect to see you." And we start talking. She moves from one room to the next, and I decided to follow her while she was talking. All right. And when she turned around, I was right, I was right there. She said, "Oh God, sorry, I didn't see it." And she kind of very politely walked around me. We went back into the kitchen. She went to the utility room. I decided to follow her in there again. All right. And then when she turned around, she was like, "What the?" And she kind of had, "What the hell are you doing?" And I said, "Practicing." Because this is what's ahead. But so far so good. Last thing I'll say to anybody who's about to retire, what's the strangest first experience? It's when you start looking for all those emails that aren't there, right? That is a big moment in your life. The rhythm. I mean, I bet you got up today, even if you woke up in the middle of the night, you probably checked your emails, right? We all do it all the time. And then one day there's no emails. That's a very different feeling.
Well, we're slipping into a conversation about identity, right? And I think we should go there, but I kind of want to go back first to this line, this fear is the starting line of growth. And fear hits people differently. 'Cause when I think about you and some of the stories you shared with me, I mean, you really have kind of rolled up your sleeves and gone on an adventure over the last 3.5 decades. You were on the front line opening up new markets and new places. Was it fear or like excitement? And was it the adventure of going to places and being like, let's see what we can do here?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was a lot of fear. I'm not going to pretend it wasn't. It was. I mean, even the very first step, which was leaving Ireland to go and take up a job in the UK. And I talked myself into the base, I'll do it for 2 years and come home. But you think about all the things that you're potentially giving up because you're so comfortable with what you know. And I suppose it's what's your bias for change. I didn't think I had much of a bias for change. And yet, as I went through the journey, and I won't bore people with it all, but there was one-way flights to Dubai eventually. There was a one-way flight to Russia, and the company had no infrastructure. You had to start from scratch, but we bought something. And that was a big one. Coming back to run the UK, which was our second biggest business, but it wasn't performing so well. And it was a banana skin. It looked like commercial or career suicide, potentially. And it was always the thing of, yeah, I am afraid of that. It does scare me. It would be easier to continue down the more probable or anticipated path. But there's something within me that kind of checks me at the end and says, yeah, but maybe that's the reason why you should do it. All right. You've only got one life. And what the hell? And you know what, Ryan? I would say the biggest differentiator in that decision, because I think life is about a series of choices you make. You hit these kind of crossroads along the journey. Which path do you choose to go down? And if you've got one life, it's like a great book. How many chapters? When you're reading a great book, you want to find out, once you realize it's great, what's going to happen in the end. You have that sense of anticipation. And then when you're about 3/4 of the way through, you start looking to see how many chapters are left because you're afraid it's going to be over too fast, right? And it's like, how many chapters can you pack in? So every time I bumped into a big fear moment, I kind of thought that's a signal to grow. If I step in, I'm going to find out something more. I'm going to learn more. I've never chased the dollar. I've always chased growth. And guess what? I ended up getting both, which is, I consider myself very fortunate.
It's so funny. I'm the guy when I finally get a couple days off. Like, we went to Mexico. This is one of the perks of being here in Southern California for a couple days for our anniversary, my wife and I. She somehow still likes me too. I don't know why, but she does. And so I'm the guy with the pen that's like in the book. And it's so crazy. Like, the thing, as you were talking, you reminded me, this is Burn the Boats by Matt Higgins. Good book, by the way, if you haven't read it. And I'm sitting here thinking about, wow, like, if I didn't move to New York City in my 20s, right, I never would have gone on this adventure. And I started in client service. And I remember a very pivotal moment where creative directors were like, we heard you're at night school to be a creative. And I love client service, but it was kind of easy for me. And I'm like, I was more curious about creativity. I'm like, if I didn't say yes, I never would have been a creative. And then it's like, if I didn't move to California, I never would have started my first agency. And you see where this is going. It's exactly what you're talking about on the chapters. But the early chapters, you don't even realize, I wasn't that intentional. I just trusted my energy. I think that's the right word. It wasn't too deep for me yet that I'm like, okay, something about me has to go try this adventure. Now looking back at it, I'm reflective. Where's that line on where someone is like in it versus you might be in it, but also reflective?
I think it's about, do you have the capacity to do two things? One is to spot something, which is really hard to do because my guess is lots have passed me by. I can remember the ones I spotted. What are the ones that I missed? But I don't dwell on it. And the second is, are you really being honest with yourself? And one that always sticks in my mind was when I was in Russia, the first 3 years were backbreaking. I mean, it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. The cool thing was, when I was finished in Russia 7 or 8 years later, I realized everything after this is going to be easy. Nothing will be right. But Um, I used to get invited to speak at industry events and what have you, and I always kind of think they just want the Kellogg name on the thing. They don't, because I don't really know enough to speak there. A bit of imposter syndrome and all of that. But we were very busy trying to integrate a business. I hadn't even got my head up almost to look at the commercial, outside piece customers and stuff like that. There was such an enormous task to be done just in integration. And I used to put everything off, all these requests that I get to do external stuff. And I was really using the busyness as an excuse because I was afraid to do it. Right. And I eventually, my PA came in one day and she said, Dave, there's an invite from so-and-so to speak at something. And I said, no, I'm too busy. I can't do that. As I was driving home that evening, I kind of thought, why did you just automatically push that one aside? And in my mind, I realized it's because you're afraid of it. You're afraid, right? And I promised myself, it was towards the end of the year, that in the coming year, the two highest quality ones with the best themes that came my way, I would step into them, but not just step in. I would try and do a knock it out of the park job with the presentation, right? As a result of making those two choices, I won't bore you with it, but the stuff that happened, the people I met by making that decision and the standards that I raised for myself, changed my life and changed me actually. And that's a kind of sliding door moment, isn't it? But what I'm proud of there is I was honest enough to say to myself, you're running scared on this. That's the real reason, and can you spot that in yourself when those moments arise?
The easy question on this one, I think, is where do you think the awareness comes from? But I think maybe the stronger question is, how do you help someone that's listening take a moment in a world that's like, we're all chaotic. I mean, a lot of us are over here, like it's chaos right now. I call it a worry war that we're living through. How do you help somebody just sort of stop and recognize a moment that they should have the awareness to go, you know what? This is the one that I actually need to like double down on and go for.
Yeah, I guess I don't know exactly the answer. It's probably different for everybody, Ryan. But for me, I think these are kind of two weird answers, perhaps. I think one is I don't like being a slave to the tasks. So I don't spend my whole day judging myself by how many of the tasks I ticked off. Reason for that is I actually believe that our year, the year for the business, the year for myself, is probably going to be determined by maybe three decisions. For all the busyness that, we are consumed by, I think there's three biggies that kind of come at us. Have you got the wit to spot them when they come, right? So you're only going to spot it if you have time for reflection. And if you're just busy loving the taskiness of everything, I have a feeling you're going to miss it. So, task mask, I would say, right? Value reflection as well. Think about your day when it's over and not just the to-do list, but the how and the stuff that is niggling at you. That would be one. And the other is, just EQ. I mean, how well do you know yourself? How honest are you with yourself? It's interesting when I look at companies and their HR kind of attributes. I don't see EQ on hardly any of them. And yet I see EQ as one of the great differentiators in leadership. Yeah, I do. And have you got enough EQ with yourself, to have honest conversations with yourself? Perhaps that's something.
I know you know why I'm smiling and laughing right now, because we were bantering back and forth. I'm like, CQ, right? Can't courage be? Yeah, you were not buying what I was putting down there on a CQ. IQ and EQ equals CQ, no? All right, a few things come to mind on that. It's funny, I'm thinking about my team right now on the to-do list, because I'm a crazy person on my to-do list. And I actually have written about a to-feel list too, like what's on your to-feel list. But I also on my silly calendar, I have blocks of time basically baked in for intentionality. Like, where's the reflection happening? Because if I don't block it on my calendar, it's going to get blocked. And it's funny you talked about. We've now brought up our wives a couple times. I always say whoever controls the calendar wins at home. I'm like, it's on the calendar. Boys' night was on the calendar. I didn't know. It's been there. And I kind of think it's the same thing. The calendar is a powerful thing. And so I'm trying to constantly make sure I'm blocking speed bumps on there to think. Is that just not the way you rolled?
I had to learn to be kind of listy. And of course, working for the company I worked for in Kellogg, our culture was very much an American corporate culture, which I have to say I loved. But a lot of it at the start was quite alien to me. I had to learn and embrace it. And some elements of how I went about things, I still preferred. So I kind of embraced what I liked and I waited, if you like, what I found helpful. But I was intentional enough to decide, like when I get on a plane, I try to avoid getting the laptop out and just crunching out another. That's different than flying over the board meetings. The flight over was always about, going through it one more time. What questions would you ask if you were on the other side? Are you ready? Do you have the answers to do all that? On the way back, it was more the movies and what's on my mind and listen to music, right? But making sure you have time for that kind of stuff too. Absolutely. I mean, just being a slave to it doesn't give you much time to think. And I actually think thinking time is more valuable.
I mean, you had a chance to sit in the seat at a fairly massive organization. You've seen transformation across cultures and countries. In your mind, where do you think courage is most lacking inside big companies today?
I don't know. I mean, it's probably the first thing that springs to mind is the agenda. Like if you're a leader, whether you're a leader of a team, a small team in the middle of the organization, whether you're the leader up here, everybody has an agenda. Do you know what your agenda is? Do you know how your agenda is connecting with what the enterprise is trying to achieve? Do you know how the agenda is consistent with all the external dynamics that you think are really, really going to shape? That's what the company wants to achieve, and that's what's going on in the marketplace, right? Is your agenda accurate? Is it future fit? And too often the agenda is the product of, I don't know, a budgetary process or, an evolution or something that was, it's 2.0 of last year's thing, whatever. Have you asked yourself, is this the right agenda for right now? And so, I used to talk about, is our agenda sharp enough, smart enough, intentional enough for what we're facing into, not just the internal. In fact, the internal was more of an outcome. It was more the external. And I think if your agenda is consistent with your customer base and where they're seeing things, you have a chance. Are you being courageous enough to say this is the right agenda, right? Or are you just inheriting something and getting on with it? Because it all starts with that. I really do believe that. And that leads to them, well, if that's the right agenda, what are the choices that are the tension in our business? And how are we resolving it? And I think by doing that, what's happening, you're dealing with the sharper end of things, with the more substantive end of things, and the time is being spent on stuff that's really going to make a difference, that's really going to matter. Doesn't mean you're going to solve it, but at least you're starting in the right direction. If it's just kind of some rollover, are you really being courageous? Have you really thought about it?
Do you think, David, that one of the reasons we had pushed this off, and you wanted to push it off, is you wanted to have the job in the rearview mirror, and I don't think it was because you wanted to get stuff off your chest that you wanted to say afterwards. I don't think it was ever about that, but just to sort of provide a little context for the listener, those who are watching this. If we were going to create a cocktail of your time, or we're going to create that one sheet, that one PowerPoint slide of percent of time that went to here's your 100% of David Lawlor. How would you break up that time so people understand, that last role, what got David's time?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll refer you back to what we just talked about, which is that whole kind of intentional agenda thing. I'll give you an example. So when the news was about to break that we were being acquired, um, I led a team, and I knew I was going to have to meet that team, and I obviously had insight ahead of them, and they're going to be walking away saying, "What do we tell our people? What do we as a group, as an enterprise, how do we lead our people through this? What's our message? And what am I going to tell my team that I'm accountable for?" These are the things that are going to be on their mind. So before they even showed up for me to give the news to them, I took a plane ride back from somewhere. I wrote down on that plane, I did spend time thinking, right, what is our new agenda for the organization? And so when I met with the team, it wasn't just, here's the news, you know, you're going to have to absorb this. Right? Now let's talk about it. The let's talk about it also had, and here's what I think our focus should be, and what our accountability, both to the enterprise, but to our people is, to help us navigate what's going to be a very fluid and uncertain time now. And where we are less masters than we have been in the past of our destiny and of timing. And having being able to lay out, these will be the three things that guide us. And for those to resonate, and people say, yeah, that really helps. That was hugely useful. So, I guess I spend more of my time thinking about stuff like that. And then we can get on with, okay, so what work falls out of that? And you don't do that yourself. Your team works with that, um, and as you know, I'm a great truster in my teams. I'm a great empowerer. Because I always surrounded myself with, really good people who wanted to work effectively together. And if you have that, you know that as a group, you'll now work out what comes next. So, like I say, I think most of my time went into, is this agenda right?
Yeah. How often did some, because you did have trust on the team, and I know many of those players, some have been on this show, shout outs to them. How often would you bring, I mean, what we're talking about here to me is clarity, prioritization, and focus, which is easy to talk about and hard to do. I recently had a client, they had a new CEO came in, and the first thing the CEO did was unveil the 26 priorities. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, have you prioritized the priorities? Like, what are people supposed to do with that? And it's not to vilify any person's process. You can just feel the overwhelmment, and like people don't know what to do with that, and they're paralyzed. So how often, when you talked about the agenda, would you be setting, okay, agenda has changed. My perspective is this is gold, this is silver, this is bronze. Now what? Or would you actually ask your team, does anybody see it different?
Yeah, I would. And how often really does depend. I mean, if you're changing it all the time, you're creating chaos. So like, what should I follow? What should I believe? Let's wait and let's not second guess. But I guess when you start a new role, people are looking, you're an elevated new leader for a lot of people, right? And they're looking for you to see, do you have a vision, a strategy, an articulation of a journey that they can connect with. And I think you have to be able to come forward with that. So at the very start of, let's say, a new role, I think it's incumbent upon you to be able to lay out a vision and a path through. So it definitely has to be there. If the business results that, having established that, if the business results are not coming through the way you wanted them to, you better think again, because stupidity is doing the same thing twice and expecting different results. Yes, if business results are not coming through, or if new dynamics pop in, like you're being acquired, or stuff like that, or if you've made an acquisition and that now changes the mix of business. If your customer base is flipping, and if they've reset an agenda, it's at times like that. But you can't do it too often. You have processes already in most big organizations. I don't know about small ones, but certainly in big ones, And you should be trying to weave it into that as much as possible. So you're not double asking and creating double work for people. But you have to have agility. The one thing that we did have with the team was we would twice in the year, outside of the bit of the process cycle, I would ask them, hey, here's how I'm thinking about this. I think this part works. Not so sure about that. Here's provocation. What do you guys think? And I would just kind of kick it around, invite everybody in to have a point of view together. And if we walked out of there saying, no, this all still makes sense, great. And if we decided maybe we should look at that area again, yeah, we would. Nothing was sacred. Agility is a good thing, but not too often. If you do it too often, you're creating chaos beneath you.
I mean, when you look back at the brands that you got to play with, I mean, just some rock star brands. I mean, some fun brands, right? I mean, not just like the cereal brands, I think Pop-Tarts. I mean, there's just some cool stuff that you got to like fiddle around with. I'm not going to do the whole, did you have a favorite child? But I am going to ask, like, unless you do and you have at it. But I'm more curious when you do now take a step back, like you talked about the book and the chapters. Was there a chapter that you felt, wow, that was risky? That actually felt risky in the moment, but ultimately it proved necessary. Was there a decision you made as president where you felt that?
Yeah, there was a few. I mean, some of them are still too close and too raw, and there's other people that are still working through it, so I can't really. There's still a couple of current ones, but we bumped into some big in the Middle East. Okay, so a couple of big crucible moments for me in my journey. Right, that guy Bill George from Honeywell and Medtronic and Harvard Exec Ed. He talks about in his book True North crucible moments. I love that whole thing because I think our lives are about crucible moments. Here's a few commercial crucible moments that I had when I was in the Middle East and we'd set up in Dubai and it was going great. The future was so bright. You had to have shades down there for sure. And then all of a sudden, due to, well, we had a big bump on the road, which wasn't of our making. It was an external thing, but all of a sudden we were derailed. And the more I tried, I got huge empathy from the company. It's not your fault. Don't worry. You couldn't have seen that coming. But the company, there's only so much you can achieve with a company's empathy. When you realize that they're not coming along anymore for the meetings and you've kind of become tangential and, peripheral, that was a horrible feeling. And like, how do we get back on the agenda? And I tried to do it all myself because it was my first time leading a team, first team I ever led. I've been a kind of lone wolf up until then. And I couldn't see a way through it. And then I realized I seem to be the only one agonizing about this. I think I need a team to own a little bit of this. And I actually took them away and kind of, I wouldn't say locked them in a hotel, but put them in that environment. So you're staying here for 2 days. I already told them, bring your stuff, tell your family you're going to be away for 2 days. But I said, here's everything I know. And here's modeling opportunities for you to play with. I'm going to come back in 36 hours time. And I want you to tell me your point of view as to how we work our way out of this. And I brought some of our agency partners in there as well. That crucial moment was the power of listening. Somebody else, was actually an external, one of our agencies, who came up with a brand idea and focus, which unlocked a path through for us. That was a massive moment for me, realizing that you got to win through your team, not on your own, right? Big lesson for me. In Russia, to your point, when I took over there, I was told we've made an acquisition, and I was told we had 8 priorities when I was handed the thing. God, have 8 priorities. It's impossible, right? What's our ambition for this business? What's its role going to be? And what are the top 3 priorities and what falls out of that, right? So we got that tighter. That was a huge moment. And then going to the UK and looking at our team, a big kind of loss. And yet I'd come from Russia where we had to build a brand. We didn't have one when we started off. And here was a team that had so much. They were such a big company in the marketplace, but their shoulders were down. And I likened what they had to Alibaba's cave. right? And I said, I can't wait to get going here, right? I said, the answer is outside these walls. The questions and the answers are outside, and we will listen to them, and we'll give the market what it needs. And we did, and very quickly, we started turning the ship around. They were probably the three biggies, the real biggies. Yeah. And with each one comes the confidence to resolve the next one. All right. It gives you don't know the answers, but as long as you know the questions, and as long as you surround yourself with people who are up for having a go, and as I said, being substantive about it, not, playing a game, but making sure the team is strong enough for the challenge, it's amazing how quickly you can find a path through. And then I have to say, those above you will appreciate, they'll see what's going on, be really transparent all the way through. And that is my style, to engage them in what it is and how we're going about it, and get them invested in our approach. And it worked. It always worked.
So I am curious how you've been with this. Let me just breathe for a moment. Is there a process in place, or are you just letting it be a little messy right now? Or we're back to the lists. Do you keep lists? Do you not keep lists?
The lady who was my EA through my last role, I meet her once a quarter. She was so good. She was so good to me anyway, but she was so good to me when I was transitioning out of the business, helping me with, I never had an email except my work email, right? I didn't have a Gmail account or anything like that. So as I was switching off, she had to keep an eye on all the personal stuff. So I was migrating all the right stuff and not me. Anyway, so I would meet her every so often, and I used to proudly show her, hey, look at my hit list of things that I've achieved since. And she was kind of like giving me stars on my forehead for the progress I was making, because I used to go through a list with her all the time. But yeah, I had to build a new infrastructure of my life, the admin of our lives as a family. Well, so much had changed for us. And I only went to my first kind of I'm retired trip indulgence like 2 weeks ago, which is 4 months after I walked away. So I've only really got going, but I've still kept myself kind of busy. The thing that I'm worried about is you can do that for about 6 months, but I think that thing about what's going to reveal itself, that's now starting to kick in. So I've embraced the different rhythm. I came away from a trip recently, and when it was over, I had that sense of, I need to get back to work now, or else I'm going to start feeling guilty that I've indulged for too long. And then you realize, no, I don't actually. That's weird. That is really, really weird. But it's also the point at which I can see I'm starting to work out where is my personal growth going to come from?
Yeah.
What am I going to do to keep growing myself? The privilege of life, Ryan, is growing yourself, right? And growing others, honestly.
Can
And
I add on to that?
yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I love just classic creative. It's like, I agree it's growing yourself, but it's also knowing yourself, right? Like to me, it starts with the who am I and what's in and what's out. It's the curiosity to go find the thing. And I don't think you're just talking about your golf game here, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's you. I think I saw a thing years ago on the news, and some guy in China, he was, I don't know, he was a physicist or a biologist, he was a scientist, and he'd won the Nobel Prize for something. And they interviewed him, the subtitles were there, they were translating what he said. And they said, okay, you're 93 years of age, he was 90 something, and he won a Nobel Prize. And he was in this lab with a white coat on, and they were saying, so now will you retire? And he's like, why on earth would I retire? I get to get up every day and still be trying to work things out, and I'm still growing and learning. And I can't think of anything more scary than losing that. And he's probably right. In fact, he is right. We all know he's right. And so where are you going to get? You can't lose that. The day you get up, I think without relevancy, without purpose, it's a scary day. And so, yeah, I'm getting to the point of what's that going to be, but I still haven't worked it out.
My dad is, gosh, let's see here, 84. Still goes to his law firm every day. He just finally passed the baton on the MD title. You know what? To your point, yeah, he still has purpose and there's energy there. And I think he's seen too many of his friends stop working.
And I know, like, particularly when you're in middle age and like the kids are young, demanding, getting older and difficult, whatever, you guys, you're married, but actually what you're doing is swapping logistics, updates. Um, and you're on automatic pilot and you kind of think, when is the pace of this? And then there's work, when is the pace of this going to be over? But actually, you look back and you look at people who are older than you, looking and say, you're lucky to have that. You're looking for someone that so many people want you, or want a piece of you, or need your input to something. And, too often the stuff that's brilliant in our lives, we don't spot it, and appreciate it in the moment. Yeah. So, I mean, my encouragement on that, and I was good at this, by the way, is big picture. Remember to see the big picture, right? And enjoy, where you're at. So I made a promise to myself that I've been in a rhythm of doing things for so long that I'll take this opportunity to see, what do I miss? What reveals itself as, necessary, and sit on my hands for at least 6 months and work it out from there. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
Is there something that's bubbled to the top that you already know that you feel comfortable sharing right now, or?
Not really. I mean, not really, honestly. There's been a couple of knocks on the door, but in terms of what do I miss, I loved being part of the team. I loved leading high functioning, high performing teams. That is a great experience. I loved being competitive and trying to win, that's great. I love the, exhilaration when you do get wins. And the thing that, as I got older, I'm 59 now. But the thing I like and miss and want to find a way to hold on to is kind of paying it back, giving it back. Yeah, I don't know. Mentoring perhaps is the word, but just encouraging people who, whether they have imposter syndrome or self-doubt or whatever, and you can see in them, hey, you got it. Stop doubting yourself. Just keep going, and just being a voice of encouragement for really talented people. And it's great to encourage everybody, but particularly for those who are really, really good, but worry and, wonder and stuff like that. I say, no, keep going. I really enjoyed that. And I hope I can keep that going, but I've kind of stepped away from it a bit. And at some point I do want to get back into it, but equally, I want to stay humble and not think that they need me. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I was trying to find a balance of that.
That little throwaway, you got it, to somebody. That there's a ton of inputs that you have to pick up on. It's not one conversation, right? It's usually over a series of conversations that I think it is. Maybe it doesn't feel courageous, but it certainly builds confidence for you to go, no, worry less. Like you got this.
Yeah.
Give me some of let's deconstruct that.
Okay.
Okay. When you think about, you got this, what are like the 3 to 5 sort of inputs you've sort of detected that someone's got it?
God, I don't know. That's a tough question. It's a good question. What I've noticed the most is that there's a lot of people who have imposter syndrome. And I had a bit of it, but it never held me back. I always believed that we, the team I worked with, had what it took to shape, influence, and inspire things in our organization. And I genuinely had faith in that. And I think that outweighed any insecurities that I may have had. And that certainly served me well. There's an adage I use, when I was back in role, but in the early days when I first became our regional lead, at my first conference, I'd been to my first kind of board meetings. I'd been to, exec board meetings. And then you're doing town halls as well around the region. And you're being asked questions. And here's something that struck me in the early days. And I've talked about this quite a lot, but it's true. People would go, so let's say you're visiting Italy or you're visiting France at a town hall, and say, Dave, does the company realize that what it needs to do is, and watch the body language. Does the company and the company was up there, right? So their hands are saying the company is up there somewhere. And then you're with the board and you're talking about the region, and somebody on the board said, so Dave, what do the people in the company think? Right? And their hand is pointing down. Right? So I remember flying back in a plane once. It's like, so where the hell is the company? And the answer is, it's where I always thought it was. It's here, right? The company, it's what you do next. And even, from when I started off as a rep, but all the way through when I was out in the Middle East at the start, remote in places like Saudi Arabia or whatever, I got out. I went to Hufuf and, really remote parts of Saudi Arabia. And you're the only person in the world that knows you're there, apart from maybe your wife, doing it for your job. But I always felt that as a result of what I or we were trying to do, we could make the company better. And I would certainly say to people, stop doubting yourself and have faith that what you're doing, I'll go back to that agenda thing, if it's connected to the enterprise, outcomes, you're the one who can make a difference. And I think having more of that and just being okay with that. Secondly, I never chased a dollar. I always chased personal growth. And I think that's a much better insecurity to have. Am I growing in this job? Will this equip me for what it is I'd like to be doing in 10 years' time? And that's a great question to ask yourself. Just the word equip. Is this equipping me for where I want to go? Is it preparing me so when I get there, I'll be better equipped to deal with it? And that's a question only you know the answer to, right? And it's a question you have the right to demand if you're progressing to the company. That's what I want in my development plan. Let's agree that that's the right target, that's the right focus area, but what are we going to do to equip me for that? I'd say those two things would be the main advice I'd give in that respect.
A word that I keep coming back to, and I'll acknowledge that this might be me looking for feedback and advice on courageous, on our business. And I like what we're doing and I like the at-bats we're getting, but I keep coming back to the word soul. And I think where this is coming from, I'm laughing. If for those that are listening, you're on a run or whatever, David's pointing up when people are talking about the company, and then the board's pointing down, like, where's the company? I feel similar to what's the soul of the business? What is your soul? It's not tangible, but it's felt, and you can feel it through the company. The ones that are winning, you can feel it maybe. And I do feel like that is part of, I don't think clients think they're bringing us in to help them clarify their soul. But sometimes that's kind of the joy, is this is the thing that's going to energize and galvanize and get people excited. Where does the soul live? It lives everywhere. It's all over the company, which is where I think it's coming from. How much of your time, how much of your time was spent on just scaling belief versus scaling the business? If you scale
a lot. That was a starting point. As I look back now, and I said it in the final post on LinkedIn as well, our culture didn't come about because we were successful. Our success came about because we focused on our culture. That was the starting point. When I started off in the region, it hadn't grown. It had grown one quarter out of I don't know how many years. And it was having a tough time. And we went on a 7-year run of growing quarters. It was phenomenal. But we started by saying, winning is a choice, and we choose to win. So let's step into what is required for that to be true. And then and the reason I told that story about the company is you. What I then followed on with, and if you think I have power, right? The power is what you do next. So I'll tell you what, you think I have power? Here you go. You can have it. What are you going to do with it? Do you know what you're going to do next to advance us? And the whole thing was to create that sense of, I belong here, right? I'm in an environment where I can fulfill my potential and connect it to the organization. And so that was, we went to great lengths to create that sense of you can all make a difference. We decide what happens next. And that became kind of infection. And if I may, with the broader company, when we did a strategy revisit, also as an ex-com, we looked at our vision and purpose, and those things, people see them on walls and say it's vanilla. And and we asked ourselves, does this really connect with the culture we're trying to build to help us advance the business? And we refreshed all of that. A seat at the table for all. It resonated in many powerful ways for a food company. And the company had the courage to say, yeah, let's step into that. That was a big shift. I can tell you it made a massive difference to the culture, which made a massive difference to the results.
All right, but you're a retired man now, David. So let's turn this into a game, okay? Let's have a little rapid fire game. So I'm gonna fire a little question and quick hits, maybe a little response as to why you feel a certain way. And so we'll start with, what scares you more, irrelevance or regret?
Irrelevance. And by the
Because
I have no regrets. I honestly don't, No. It did the best and it kind of worked, and it worked for people and lots of people, and I was fulfilled by it, no regrets. But irrelevance, yeah, scares the life out of me.
what's one courageous act more leaders need to normalize?
This may not be popular. I don't think, you think about where industry's at these days of commerce, whatever, enterprise is that. I can't think of an industry that's not in flux right now. I don't know too many industries that know exactly what's going to be true in 5 years. AI, regulatory, where consumers are at, it's all changed. And there will be winners through the cycle, and you need to decide, I'm going to be one of them. You're not going to get there with mediocrity. One of my least favorite words in the dictionary is mediocrity. And the notion that you will be okay, that you will have what it takes to navigate that very fluid, unpredictable, unknown that's in front of everybody with a bang average leadership team or teams, I think do you believe that? Really? No. So why are you going along with it? You have to get great people into key roles. And if there's been a constant through my journey, it's been the caliber of some great people in key roles, making the team so much richer. So yeah, I'm stunned at how many leaders put up with an average team, and expect great things to happen. You've got to be more demanding of the caliber of people who lead.
Do you think it's just they feel there's so much to do and it's just a slow down of knowing, if I move on from this person, that's exhausting and I don't have that person, we got to find that person? What is it? Is it all the above?
I mean, circumstance by circumstance is probably different. A lot of it is people don't want to have tough conversations. People will agree to have a tough conversation, but they find it very hard to do it, because it is hard to do. I mean, I get that. But you're not doing anybody any favors, neither the individual nor the team nor the enterprise. So who you're really helping by not having that conversation. But I'd say that's probably one of the more common factors, is, are people really having honest conversations to set expectations the right way? And if expectations aren't met, what are you doing about it? So yeah.
All right, back to rapid fire here. Okay, World Cup's coming up. Are you a believer? Like, is the world going to get behind this? I don't want to get too political, but it is in my country.
Yeah, it will. It will. I mean, there's all the, the noise around it as it builds up, but soccer is the number one sport in the world, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And once that thing kicks off, everybody's going to say, right, let's watch the game. And, it's in America, so America's going to want to see it. It's in its own backyard. And the rest of the world, most of the rest of the world loves it, right? Africa, Brazil, Europe, whatever, Asia is loving football these days. So, yeah, I mean, I think once it starts, who's not going to watch it?
You got a prediction? Who's going to win this thing?
No, I never. My predictions are always wrong. Look, I love beautiful game. So my bias, Ireland. I'm Irish, so we didn't qualify again. But my favorite team to watch is Brazil. So
Yeah,
if they
the
play,
dance is real.
come on.
I'm curious how courage, if courage personally plays for you right now. It's a word that you've used a lot of that currency in those 35 years. But here we are now. And I don't have my finger totally on the pulse on is right now a celebration? Is it a vacation? Is it a healing? Is it a relief? Does courage play right now for you personally?
Right now, I think is a transition. I'm standing on a bridge, but I don't know where that bridge is going to, what land it's going to connect to. But I'm not worried about it. And I don't have to worry about it, which is, wonderful. But I got to find out where that bridge is going to take me to. I'm way too young to, no amount of playing golf is it's not fulfill anybody. It's probably going to break your heart more than anything. But no, you gotta find something. I just don't know what that is yet. So yeah, where am I at right now? I'm transitioning.
I always learn something from you. And again, I so appreciate that you have a love for the word courage. I mean, I know what I remember, you were guest lecturing at Harvard and talked about the need for courage. And I think that's really what brought us together. Granted, I wasn't at Harvard for that moment, but just the wisdom that you bring to the table look, if someone's still listening here at the 50-minute mark, they're clearly invested in the conversation, right? How do you want to wrap? And just for more context, I've got my listenership, but I know that people that know you, are also listening right now. Maybe they used to work for you or inspired by you. What's your sort of final takeaway that you want us to walk away from this conversation with?
I'll share this with you for those people who are looking for courage to lead. So this is very much with leadership in mind. That time I went to Harvard and listened to Bill George, and he brought in a whole lot of leaders to talk to us and stuff like that. In his book True North, he talks about, as I said, crucial moments and stuff. It led me to this kind of notion of power capital. And I don't know if that's his term or my term or whatever, but I started using it. And it's, you think about an organization has capital, which is that money within the company that they have to invest on strategy in the future and growing the business, right? And as a leader, you have power. Now, in this day and age, we're like, oh, well, it's not really about power, it's about the team and all that. But you do, as the titular lead, for sure, you have disproportionate power. And you have to make a decision as to how you're going to use it. And you only have so many minutes in the day. So like capital, it's constrained. So what you do with that influence, that power, is that going to be an accident or is it going to be something intentional? And I think the whole idea of being intentional about what you stand for, where you show up, because very often it's what people see you do is what they hear you do that actually has the greatest ripple. And so I would just encourage people who are stepping into leadership or considering their leadership brand or whatever, think about your power capital. What do you stand for? How is that your authentic representation of yourself? And how does that connect to the business and the business ambitions? If you can connect those together, I think you're going to be a leader that inspires a lot of people.
Man, I can't wait to see which way you go off this bridge. Just don't go off the bridge. All right, how about we just do an intersection? Can we do an intersection? Are we turning left? Are we going straight?
Here's what I think is really going to happen. I'm going to end up being the best dishes, washing and drying dishes guy where I live. That's my next achievement, I think.
Well, we're kind of back to where we started. Fear is the starting line of growth, and it's like, what's that next starting line for you? And if I'm a leader and I'm listening, one of the things I've been thinking about is a very simple line to try to make. I'm trying to take the fear out of change, which is almost an impossible task. But like small little changes are changes too. That's kind of how big changes, you get to big changes. Like, what needs to change here? Like, what needs to change here? And I guarantee if you are honest about that answer, there lies the starting line where fear exists, right? And growth happens.
I always enjoy talking to you. You know that. That whole thing of fear is the starting line of growth. You like to write books, right? Maybe there's a book in talk to people to prove that stepping into change is actually the better choice. Talk to those who've done it about what would have happened if you didn't, and what do you think happened because you did, and just look for proof. Hey, don't be afraid of it. Hug it, embrace it, right? And it doesn't matter how it turns out, you will be the better for having made that choice. That's for sure, because you'll be a bigger person, right? And that's what I mean by fulfillment, I don't know about what happiness means, but I think being fulfilled is what really, really matters. And that's close enough for me.
I can see it already. Fear to Fulfillment by David Lawlor. We have found the bridge.
We write it together. There you go. That's what's on.
I'm in. Okay. I'm in. Where's the midpoint? Where am I meeting? In New York?
We'll be able to point to this is where it started. Okay.
I love it, man. David, appreciate you, man. Enjoy the dog, the fam, and we'll see you soon.
Okay. Enjoy the World Cup. See ya.
Let's go USA. I know, blasphemy. Let's go.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Courageous Podcast. If you enjoy the show, don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts so more people can find us. See you again next week.